First up, I guess if we could get a timekeeper and a minutes taker. I'm happy to do timekeeping. One of these days, I'll show someone how to do the MCTV process, but for now, that's easy enough for me to do, so I can do that. Would anyone like to take minutes?
I can do minutes.
Okay, thank you.
It's just gonna give me a minute to set up though.
Okay.
If that's all right.
So is the timekeeper process changed? It's just getting the,
It's not that complicated. It's basically just the timestamps for each agenda
Right.
item, and there's a few questions that you kind of have to answer when you're sending the time codes to Ruth. And basically the way it works is usually I just fill in the agenda with the timestamp as we go.
Right.
And then starting at 0 and just counting up from there. But then you need to note if anything was tabled, if there was any public comment, and if anything got reordered. So that way they can basically make sure the timestamps on the video are correct. And then you also need to make sure you get it to them by noon the next day.
Right.
That's kind of the biggest thing, especially if you've failed to get the right time codes, then sometimes I'll need to sign in as soon as Duncan sends us the video to get the time codes to send to Ruth. It's not the end of the world if we don't get them in, but
yeah, I've done it a couple of times. It was, the hardest part is remembering to get it in.
yes. Yeah, because I'll usually get pretty prompt emails
Right.
early afternoon the day after being like, hey, so are you planning on sending in the timestamps? So yeah, it's not terribly difficult, thankfully. And I guess, this is a pretty easy agenda. Sometimes it's a little bit harder when we have a bunch of items. You good, Jim? Or you need a second?
I'm ready. I'm good.
Okay, cool. Okay, next up, we have approving the minutes from August 3rd, which was really our July meeting that just got bumped a week. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve those minutes.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion or comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great, unanimously approved. Any additions or changes to the agenda from committee members? Okay, then we will move on to public comment. Ian or Merrick, would either of you like to?
Please.
Okay, yeah, come on up. Welcome back.
Yes, thank you. And for the record, my name is Ian Stokes, probably recognized as a former member of this committee. I'd like to briefly address an issue that's not on your agenda, namely the maintenance of existing trails, and especially a priority I'd like to draw attention to is to establish a bypass of the wetland section of the former Bass Trail, which has been very wet with running water. I think right now it's dry, but it's for a large part of the year it gets very wet, as I'm sure you all know. So I know that the committee is very busy with other things, but the increased water flow across that section of the Bass Trail, increased human traffic, and the successful scoping of a potential bypass route all point to establishing a bypass as a priority for action. And that section of the trail now provides access to both the VYCC and the Maple Wind trails. And I know, of course, there's interest in using it as a part of an enhanced access to the northern part of the forest, including mechanized travel on that route. So I know those aspects of the forest quite well, and I have flagged a possible route for this bypass trail. So please don't hesitate to let me know if I can provide any assistance with what I see as a high priority for your committee. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Ian. Yeah, go ahead, Wright.
Do you have an opinion on whether you would prefer your flagged route or a boardwalk on the north side of where tractors might go?
Yeah, I know those have been considered as two possible options. I suppose I see the boardwalk as challenging. It would have to cross streams, as would a bypass further north
Right.
sections. Also, I imagine to get a level terrain to put a boardwalk on that northern side, to get the terrain level would involve some excavation. And my understanding is that excavation or bringing in fill is not appreciated in a wetland. And that would, of course, that boardwalk would be running through actual wetland
Right.
as well as it's documented. So that for that reason, I prefer the approach of a bypass further up the hill and further north.
How many bridges did you anticipate?
That's the practical difficulty. There are, I believe, three. One right at the very east end of the potential bypass that I've looked at. One can avoid crossing a stream there by taking a quick right turn and rejoining the vast trail, which technically, according to the maps I've seen, would show going through a wet back into the wetland. But what I've seen also is that the terrain is dry and not problematic from the point of view of a trail in a wet area.
Right.
Quick. Were you, and I asked you this once before outside of the meeting, and I forgot the answer. Were you using 50 or 100 foot as a buffer? Do you do the under?
Yeah, what I looked at, what I sort of scoped out was based on what we'd heard from the state authority, which is that we should stay 50 feet from the wetland. So that's what I sort of scoped out. That
Right.
the 100 feet mostly, I think, would be relatively easy, but
Would be what?
it would be relatively easy to keep 100 feet, but
Yeah.
relatively easy for most of it.
Yeah.
I think 50 would be more practical in some parts.
But the plan is, the draft plan right now is 100 feet. And the only thing, and I don't think that's a deal killer at all, the bit about bridges. I mean, the sinuosity plan had a bunch of bridges and they're sure, yeah, we can do that. Technically, there's no big issue. To go 100 feet, the only caution is, I think it seems there's a lot of streams that converge in that 100 to 0 foot area. So the farther north you get, the more jumps that have to happen. I mean, ideally, if we didn't have to worry about the buffers, you could, get over maybe like you said with the 3, but there may be a few more, but that's, if that's what we require to be compliant.
My one concern with that reroute, what you flagged, is just how up and down it is. I mean, I think versus a board, the nice thing about a boardwalk is it would be flat. So for a walker or an e-biker or whatever, it's just super easy and accessible. Whereas that terrain, because it's crossing streams, it's fairly hilly. So it would be in some ways more work than a boardwalk to site a trail in there. But and it would change the character too. That would be my
impression is that it's not as easy as originally we thought, just looking at the map.
totally. Yeah.
Both options that have just been mentioned discussed have their challenges. The boardwalk, of course, would need to be moved sufficiently off the existing path to allow continued agricultural traffic. We know that. I remember that being discussed. And I have closed my prepared comments by saying I'm able and willing to help if called on. And I think that there's no there needs to be site visits.
Yeah.
A good way forward would be for a group or for the committee to go and take a look and, spend some time looking at different options. And I'd be very happy to, come along and
Yep.
show what I've already witnessed and
Yep.
documented to some extent.
We didn't really get to talk about it last meeting, but I met with a VYCC person to just see if they were interested in potentially bidding on a boardwalk project and what a rough cost would be, just to sort of feel that out to see if that would be something we'd want to pursue moving forward. But really nice guy, Tommy Marin was his name, really nice. They were definitely excited at the prospect of having a project like that nearby. They're quite expensive. He thought it would be first he thought like 5 weeks, but then he sort of walked it back and said, well, maybe more like 3 to do hundreds of feet of boardwalk. And I think their going rate is like $8,500 a week, something like that. Is that, yeah. So, and that's not including materials. Materials are probably, based on the drawings I did, I think $10,000 to $12,000 just from Hemlock to do it. So, but they did think, Tommy thought that we could work together on a grant. Would be an RTP grant, which is, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, Merrick, but it's federal highway money that can be used to connect parcels. But Merrick was also saying it's quite hard to get. Tommy seemed pretty confident that together we could maybe get one of these grants and cover such costs as he was talking about. But talking to Merrick, it's a hard grant to get. So, but he definitely looked at it and thought it would be something that VYCC could and would be interested in tackling. So maybe that's a way forward. I mean, there's still all the questions of how does it work in the right of way, and what does it mean for the wetlands program? Are they okay with citing a boardwalk there when there is the potential for a reroute, even though that would have its own challenges? So I wonder if maybe in the next month, we try and get a site visit going where you could come out and talk about your reroute. Maybe we get Tina out there, maybe Tommy from VYCC again. Does that feels like it would be a good
I agree.
bit of legwork
Yep.
before that RTP grant deadline. And
Yeah, I think that maybe assigning a working group to do that. I don't know if we necessarily want to schedule a site visit where the first time we visit it, we're also bringing in the state and VYCC, because it might feel a little bit disorganized. I think having an initial site visit with Ian, then maybe a couple folks from the committee.
well, we've already looked at it with Tina. We've already crossed that bridge.
We did,
right?
yeah, we did walk along that wetland stretch. But this would be, looking, I guess, at the flagged route versus kind of going back and forth. And
I think without Tina there, that's a pretty useless. What are we gonna accomplish without her, right?
I agree.
I think she's got to weigh in on.
And when does her season wind down where she has time?
I mean, last year that was pretty late, right? That was like September, I
it
think.
was late-ish, but we engaged her early enough, and we got in like the last week or two before they were closing up shop for the winter.
right.
So I can't remember the exact day. It was October 15th.
Oh, okay.
So they wind down certainly by the
Right.
end of October, if not, the second to last week in October.
Yep.
I think she could advise us on the preferred alternative. As
Yeah.
one that might help us in the decision making.
Yeah, I think it's one of a number of factors. There's cost, there's accessibility, there's a lot to consider, right? I mean, doing a few bridges that's further from the wetlands, that's minimally invasive, that costs less money, has a lot of, merits. But then on the flip side, having a publicly accessible trail that's right next to the main one, so people are more likely to use that. If someone is walking on the main trail and let's say it's mowed, they might be like, well, just gonna walk through this because I can see that it's
Yeah.
clear versus
Right.
going off on the, the uphill route. They might say like, oh, this looks easier to me. If it's completely overgrown, then they might choose that way. But otherwise, like if it's mowed, but there's also a boardwalk, people will probably take the boardwalk. And then we've talked about farm vehicle access, we've talked about fill, we've talked about leveling, there's a lot to consider. So yes, I do think it will be helpful to get the state involved, but I just want to make sure that it's a productive site visit and that we feel organized and ready to
I got
discuss and informed. So like if
Yeah,
that means just Ian and I get together and talk about some of this stuff and scope the flagged route and think about some of this stuff and have like questions prepared in advance and the things that we want to consider, I think that will make for a more productive conversation versus just saying like, oh, can you meet us at the forest again? And then we're all just kind of trying to figure out what we're even trying to ask her. I think we want to be a little bit more organized than that, but I don't,
Yeah. that
maybe
makes
it's
a lot of
not necessary for us to do a working group. It could be one of us or a couple of us just work with Ian.
Yeah.
And then we just arrange a site visit it could be quorum or sub-quorum, I guess. If enough people want to do it, we would just have to warn it, 24 hours in advance and it would be on the town site and, the public could attend. We would also need somebody to take minutes. Otherwise, if we keep it under quorum, then, we can just do it more casually. So,
Yep.
yeah, I mean,
That
Jim, you
makes
were
sense.
already interacting with Tina on this stuff. So do you want to reach back out and just see what her availability is?
Yep.
And we could kind of figure out when we might want to make that visit. And then in the meantime, Ian, I could work with you to meet up at the forest at some point and we could kind of look at both and, consider some of the, the options, and anyone else who wants to tag along, as long as we're sub quorum, I think would be fine.
Yep. That sounds like a good plan.
Okay, I like that.
Jim,
Well,
did
thanks for
did
listening.
Tina talk about delineating that wetland, that she's got a good line?
She
where
would,
That is,
she said she would do the opposite, that we would flag a route. This was at the time we were talking about a reroute. She said, flag your route and then I will confirm
And
that
she'd
you're
check.
beyond the buffer.
Gotcha.
Now, she would presumably work off her usual buffer, which I assume from wherever she says this is the edge, we could then measure an additional 50 feet, or maybe she could
yeah.
do that herself.
Is that class 2 or class 3?
That's a class 2.
2?
Yeah. Yep.
So that's 100 feet, according to our plan.
Okay, so the other thing worth considering though is when we talked about the parameters and the plan and all that, is this is a reroute versus a net new trail,
Right.
which kind of falls under a different
Okay,
set of criteria. So like if it's a net new trail, then the parameters apply. If it's a reroute
you're right.
because it's a sensitive area or, it's overused or whatever, then I don't know. I guess we didn't strictly define exactly what that looks like. And I guess then you kind of get into details of like, well, what's considered a reroute and what's not,
It's pretty cool.
But yeah, it follows the trail very closely and it's just, 50 to 100 feet away.
Yeah.
What I will say is that when we met with Tina, part of the reason we talked about doing the reroute 50 to 100 feet uphill was because she said, if you just flag a route that is, within that, it's far enough away from the wetlands, then like this isn't even something that like you will have to have us come look at it, but like you will instantly get a green light from us. Whereas if we decided to do a boardwalk within that 50 to 100 feet, or I guess 50 feet, then we have to start getting into all the nitty-gritty details of how to build properly within the wetland. So I think that Tina's going to say, yeah, well, we prefer the uphill route because it means that you don't have to work within any of the the state parameters for building within a wetland. So I think we need to be clear on whether or not we do prefer, accessibility, and we've considered the farm traffic and we've thought about all these things and the expense and all that. And so that we are kind of, I don't know, and that we are sure that the flagged route isn't going to change too much either, because if we have Tina come out and she approves it, but then we decide, oh, we should switch the flagged route because we don't like it for one reason or another, then do we have to bring her back out? I don't know what all the rules are there, but I feel like, I just want to be a little bit more organized than just having a bit of like an ad hoc meeting with her without us being organized.
Cool. Thanks for reminding me.
If I may, just one more thing.
Sure.
I tend to prefer the boardwalk, but I think with the boardwalk, because it's a structure, we need to go before the DRB.
Yeah.
And maybe with bridges as well, but certainly a boardwalk is bigger than. I think.
I can check in with Dante. Of course, we had the whole, this is a while ago now, but when we had that meeting with Tyler and he was talking about the zoning regs, he was the former zoning administrator and now we have Dante.
Right.
So he might interpret them differently. But Tyler's take was because this is conditional use, it applied, like different regulations apply. So a lot of the logic that's used for normal trail building on private land is different than the type of logic that gets used for state land. At least that's what he was saying at the time. Could be Dante says like you're good and there's no issue with this at all and we don't need any permits or any but we should at least ask. So I could reach out to Dante and ask, hey, we're thinking about putting some bridges in or a boardwalk in. What do we need to keep in mind, considering the history of conditional use in the forest and whatever.
Yep.
So
right.
Yeah.
Oh,
you good?
If we're done with this topic, thanks very much for all the extra attention that's been given to the point that I've raised. Thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for resurfacing it. I mean, we have talked about this a bit in the past, and especially this summer with the draft management plan and considering all the public feedback and stuff that's on the agenda for today. With like the MOU and a trail proposal and all that. So it's unfortunate that with the timing, it's been sort of like sidetracked, but it's good to have that resurfaced, and hopefully we can kind of do things in parallel here. So yeah, thank you for bringing it up. And I'll be in touch with you directly.
Yeah.
Merrick, did you have any public comment?
Yeah. I gotta run in a second, but I wanted to at least make a quick comment. I just wanted to make a public comment on the draft MOU. I took a look at the agenda and there was a link, file in there.
Yep.
Mostly here today just as a representative to RMT and a member of the public.
Yep.
And just on our side as like an organization, I realize that document's like under consideration. It's a draft. It's obviously not final. It hasn't been sent to us, but I just wanted to note, just because I know there's been a lot of work the committee has been doing and like drafting these documents.
Yep.
And just as that conversation evolves, as it's currently written, we would absolutely not sign on to it.
Okay.
And I just wanted to share that before there's like a lot of progression made on that. I think really the comments that some of us provided and that, the organization really wants to support is having these things enshrined into the overall management plan. And a lot of the comments about, access in the northern portion of the forest being things that have been determined, via whether that's this committee or us asking, others for support of that nature sort of in the overall management plan. The MOU, I think, is really awesome. I really appreciate that there's discussion of engaging partners on the subject.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an awesome, tactic to sort of get everyone on the same page and agreement.
Yep.
But I just sort of wanted to mention that as it's laid out in some of the conditions in there, we wouldn't be interested in being a party on that as it's written.
Gotcha.
Mostly being the fact that there's been a lot of evolutions of these management plans and a lot of additional documentation, and the process has been very long.
Mm-hmm.
And adding a whole nother layer to that, in addition to what's already sort of enshrined, if our organization and a bunch of us as individuals don't like what's in the management plan, agreeing to that management plan to then sign on to another document is just an entire another layer that gets added into this, discussion. So I think that story we're in the live it. I think we really appreciate that, the comments are being tallied and there's discussion of whether or not the management plan gets adapted, and we're totally that's the committee's choice. I think more just wanted to share that as you guys have a lot on your plates that, if there's minor tweaks to that, that's still probably not going to be something that we're, interested in being a partner on.
Okay.
And we just prefer to see a lot of that discussion baked into the overall plan, essentially.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. So yeah, a few of us, Jim, Wright, and I had a little working group to sort of talk about some of the different proposals and how can we move forward and, trying to find compromise and a path forward here. One thing we had discussed, we were trying to kind of keep the initial formulation of the MOU and which direction we were trying to head just within a small group. But one thing we talked about was trying to bring in folks from, the trails community and, from the conservation community to see if we could expand and like get more like direct feedback from folks that, care deeply about this and, how we can move forward in a way that would be amenable to all parties.
Sure.
So, yeah, I don't know if there's anyone on RMT in particular who would be potentially interested. We haven't really decided what the next step is, and maybe some of that's going to be determined this evening. But there's potential that we might be looking for a couple of folks in the community who are not ACFC members who would basically be able to weigh in. And even if that's not something that you or somebody in RMT is interested in joining, I would be interested in either, I guess, like emailed thoughts, or if you want to just like meet up or like chat on the phone at some point to get some more just like, raw input. Cause
no, I think I appreciate the invitation. I'm absolutely happy to be representative, and like we have a board, we talked, they knew I was coming to discuss sort of stuff. I think it's more along the lines that, our feedback and our hope is that like as a partner, we've engaged in like the overall management planning process, and it's not like a additional documentation and that's sort of like a whole nother subset and stuff. It just seems like if we're mostly talking about like one trail, right? It just seems like that could be pulled into the overall plan. We could have the discussion with the interested stakeholders and parties about like how to best resolve that. I understand the desire to want to have a management plan approved. But like this is the major sticking point. So just trying to approve a management plan that doesn't really tackle it and then kick it to another document just didn't really seem like the right solution. Or like something that we really want to engage with again, right? It's like you end up like just having the same chapter reopened again. If this sort of document's going to be collated and part of the management plan and we're all going to come to agreement before then, great. But if not, I just don't really see a situation where us as RMT like supports the current management plan without knowing what the end process of an additional document is.
Yeah, so one clarification that I can make is that one of the aims of the document was basically to see, I don't know, I guess I'll speak frankly about where I think things are at with approval of the management plan. It doesn't seem to me like the select board is eager to approve it right now. Like I think there are a few things, that need to get worked out. There's the public feedback session. They talked about holding at least 2. There was feedback from both sides. We probably need to make some more adjustments to the management plan based on some of that feedback, emailed comments, public comment, all that. This was a plan to basically see if we could sort of defer the approval of the management plan, but sort of see if we could operate under that framework to basically build, explore the possibility of building a trail. So it wouldn't involve any party agreeing with the management plan as it stands. And it wouldn't require the select board to approve it because technically right now we're still governed by the original management plan, not the new one that's pending, right? So this was sort of an attempt to see like, can we kind of prove out some of that stuff and try to see if we can come to a compromise. So it wouldn't require the parties, on that document to say, yes, we approve of the management plan and then we're going to move forward with this. It would be, we're going to try to set this to the side to sort of like gain more confidence from the public and from, parties that are not happy with the way that the current management plan stands. I feel like maybe I can't speak for the whole committee, but I feel like, and maybe this is a foolish thought, but I think that it's possible to move forward and to find compromise and to explore the possibility. And this would be an opportunity to do that without committing anyone to agreeing to approve the plan like as it stands. We would basically start trying to see how we could move forward. And then hopefully that would help people feel a little bit more confident about.
That makes sense. I unfortunately have to run. I'm late for a friend, but I think the sort of like overarching sort of sentiment here being I totally get the structure. Like the major frustrations on this side is that the process has taken a long time. We keep coming back to like circling around and trying to reach a thing. And we haven't just like addressed whether or not we're going to do this one way or another. And folks would like to make a decision or either have their public comment like heard, or the committee say that, no, we do not want to go in this direction. And we do not support, like access north of the power lines or any additional trail development. And like, that's the statement. And that's the plan that goes out to draft. That's fine. People are going to show up and provide comment against that. But just sort of like reaching the point where like we decide one way or another. The compromise on the trail side has been like, we started with like a lot of trail and there was a larger vision and it's been like widowed down time and time again, which is totally okay. That's like what the committee's decided. Like, that's totally fine. And folks have provided public comment that that's not their preference a number of times. But I think that like continuing asking to compromise at some point there's sort of the line being drawn in the sand of like, this is beyond what we're willing to compromise to if it continues to be sort of whittled and whittled and whittled. So I think I gotta go,
Okay.
but thank you all so much for all the work on this.
Yeah, for sure. I
I hope
appreciate
you have a
your,
good meeting.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate
Thanks,
the,
Merrick.
yeah, comment.
I feel like I did not get any of that back and forth.
It's all good.
There was so much.
We got a recording. Like, I was just thinking like, I'm not typing fast enough.
I was so interested
Thanks,
in,
Steve.
so interested in that back and forth. I didn't.
It's tough when you have to listen to.
Yeah, and think about
listening
things.
and typing at the same time is very hard.
That's interesting, Sam. I didn't think of the MOU that way, that it's kind of like a way to build good.
To build
faith,
trust.
build
Yeah,
trust.
exactly.
And then, because you're right, I think with that in place, which maybe it's a dead end, but in theory, with that in place, the management plan would be pretty easy to get approved. I think.
Yeah, I would think so, but you know, I
Yeah.
suppose, you know, I feel like we need to talk with, you know, stakeholders in the trails community to move forward, because it sounds like despite our efforts to try to come, you know, to some sort of compromise to even move forward, they're so sick of how long this has taken that they don't, I mean, based on what I was hearing from Merrick, and I'll probably have to like re-listen and sort of like write down
Well, I
or
think
reach out to RMT to make sure that I'm understanding their position here. It sounds like they just want to see some codified in the management plan, and not to see, you know, discussions happen while the management plan just sits. And I think there are some things that need to be clarified, because there's,
It's like that.
yeah, things like
I talked with Merrick the other day for a while.
Yeah.
And my understanding was he yes, thought the management, that all the MOU stuff could be baked in the management plan, but my takeaway wasn't that they just didn't want to do the MOU period. It was just, there were some things in there that they had issue with.
Mhm.
So I wonder if it'd be worth you just talking with him one-on-one and
that's what I would
figuring
like
that,
to do.
yeah,
is,
figuring
like,
that piece out.
Yes, and I might want to do the same thing with like a member or a few members of like the conservation community, because I also sort of, I didn't show the MOU because it wasn't ready by the time that I had the conservation commission meeting. I think it was last week or the week before, but like I mentioned the MOU and the fact that we were trying to move forward, and I got absolutely grilled.
Oh,
Like
really?
it turned into this big thing where like I was trying to have to defend just the idea that we were even considering a compromise, and I took a lot of heat for it. So like it's going to continue to be hard to try to like thread this needle, because like
Yeah.
on one side, you know, we're trying to find compromise here, and ultimately we're just getting heat from both sides now, you know, where it's like
Right.
the trails community is not happy because they want the connection and they don't think that this is workable. Meanwhile, the conservation folks are saying like there should never be a trail in the north, and like why are you even considering this? So
Yeah.
we got some work to do, and
And it was my idea to put their name in the document as a party.
Mhm.
Well, that may have offended them.
No.
Okay, good.
No, it didn't.
All right, good.
yeah, one of the things I think that I mentioned was
One comment, Sam.
yeah.
The original document that Wright put together, I found that to be a lot easier to understand. I feel like
Okay.
your rework made it hard. Did you find that? Maybe because it was your original ideas.
It was my original idea, just putting stuff down on paper. So I didn't,
Well, I
I
like how
wasn't
you.
wedded to it. I just
know.
was trying, that's what I
But
was.
your format was everything, it sort of could fit into, I could understand why each word was in that document, which I found really helpful. Whereas with yours, I was trying to understand the intent and I couldn't always see it. I think I got most of it, but it'd be awesome to like have both documents, you know, like in front of us and be able to, yeah, just make
Make
sense of,
Sam's more concise.
yeah, make
maybe.
Sam's more concise and make sure that your original intent is mirrored in what went into our agenda.
Right.
If that makes, I would definitely feel good about that.
Well, we could,
I mean, I guess if
yeah, we could
we
meet
even
again.
want to go forward with the MOU, it might be
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of inputs here, right? There's I got some feedback from RCC. We just got some feedback from Merrick, and I'm sure RMT and Merrick have more thoughts, that could be delivered. I mean, you have some thoughts about like the structure of the MOU itself. So clearly there's a lot of different suggestions on like how this could be changed from like just the format to some of the like clauses. Dan?
I think we just need to be careful how we talk about this, because like what you just said, that conservation doesn't want any trails in the north. That's just not true.
Yeah.
And it's not what the management plan says.
Yeah.
And that is just kind of reinforcing this false understanding of the framework that is outlined in the management plan that is there to judge and evaluate any sort of trail proposal that comes forward. So casting it in this us, they, them, conservation versus trails, I don't think is helpful.
Yeah, I
All or nothing thinking, I don't think is helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage you to listen to the feedback I got at RCC because it felt like I was the bad guy, so on one hand, I understand. But there was even like some of the stuff that was mentioned was like RCC should take a stance that there should be no new trail development in the north. And like, that's something that was like encouraged that the RCC should basically vote on, so like, it's one thing to say that, but also like, I don't know, that was like,
Is that something the RCC decided, or is that just a?
it wasn't
conversation?
on the agenda, but basically that was one thing that was mentioned during the meeting, and then also like I got follow-up emails from people like basically saying that like, yeah, I agree that like RCC stance should be that like there should be no new trail development in the north, and like this should be a hard line that RCC takes on the management plan. So like that there still needs to be more discussion on the RCC side about like what their stance is, because that could be just a couple of people that had some thoughts, and ultimately it might be that that's not the general sentiment on the commission. But yeah, I was really, hopeful, perhaps foolishly, that like this MOU and this working group was really going to lead to some productive conversation. And it seems like all it's done is we've just gotten blowback from RCC and from RMT so far. And I haven't really heard that much like good feedback, aside from the three of us who were working on the meeting.
It was pretty clear just now that they don't like it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And like and RCC seemed to feel the same way. So like we are trying to find a way forward, and instead, like it seems like nobody likes this. So like,
But didn't we say at the outset, that when the three of us met, which was, we're threading a needle, and probably we've done, the three of us, I can only speak for the three of us.
yeah,
Maybe this committee won't even approve the MOU, but if two separate sides don't really like it for different reasons, either we totally blew it or we've kind of
Done our job.
found it. Yeah,
done our job.
yeah.
That's not well said.
No, you're right. I mean, like a sign of a good compromise is nobody's happy, right?
Right.
And it's like the other party here is the select board. Like they have to basically weigh public opinion, unless we're taking a town vote, whether that's like a, walk-in ballot, vote, or it's a town meeting day thing. But like they need to take the temperature of how people in town feel about the management plan and, a connecting trail to SIP or whatever, and decide how they want to move forward, to make sure that the community is happy with how the parcel is getting used. And so they also they might see what we produce and decide like, yeah, we see the, how these two different groups are not happy with this MOU, but we think this is a good sign. Or they might say, yeah, you've totally blown it and you need to try again, So we might need to just continue to push forward and,
Right.
Do what we think is like in the best interest of the community, even if we are taking the heat. But clearly I think it needs like a little bit of adjusting, because right now it seems like if we're not even willing to get a party to come to the table to talk, then like that's not a great sign. But I feel that way sort of right now about.
I didn't hear that. I may be incorrect.
Yeah.
What I heard Merrick say, I think maybe he said this, that he doesn't support the management plan and but he likes the conversation about a trail.
Yes.
Yeah, and the MOU should be, I think he says MOU should be incorporated in the management plan to include the trail.
Yeah.
That's sort of what I heard.
Baked in, I think.
Baked
Yeah.
in. Correct, rightly or wrongly, that's sort of what I heard.
Yeah, and that may be that's kind of why I want to have a longer conversation with him or somebody else from RMT, and also like emailed comments would be helpful because then they're sort of like distilled in writing versus just trying to like read between the lines.
Right.
I'm also unsure if we included the MOU as is, that would basically say like we're going to, have a good faith effort to try to find a connecting trail that is compliant with the parameters that exist in the MP2 if all the parties agreed on it. But if that isn't possible, then like we wouldn't be held to it based on the current what's in the packet. It basically says like we're going to do our best to try to find something, but we're not going to say that this connection has to happen. What I have been hearing from a lot of the folks, or what I seem to be hearing from, proponents of trail development and ACF is that they want to guarantee that there's going to be a connecting trail to SIP, which I'm uncomfortable with, and I'm not willing to support that. And who knows, it's possible that either the select board overrides that or like the committee decides that, we, want to guarantee a connection and I'm the odd man out. But like, I don't think that that's a proper way to go about.
When I talked to Merrick the other day, that was, I thought, the fundamental sticking point. That
Was that it didn't guarantee.
yes.
Yeah.
And my take on all of that is that, connection it's binary, right? Either you connect or you don't.
Yep.
And so confirming that a connection will be made, but it will be made in the most the least environmentally impactful way possible, to me feels like a reasonable understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I think that happens all the time, right? That the environmental permitting that we do at the ski area very much operates that way. So much of what Tina does is looked at through that lens where, and not always, right? There are certain things that are just non-starters. And I think Merrick was kind of saying that, like, if it's a non-starter, if connection is impossible, then just make it impossible and don't
string us along.
Yeah, don't string us along.
Yeah.
If it's possible, let's commit to making the connection. It will then be required to be done in the most environmentally friendly way possible, right? That's the sort of hope from. That's a way of putting it in a memorandum of understanding that I think they would sign.
Yeah.
Not to speak for them.
Sonia?
Yeah, I'm just wondering where it would put us if the minimally invasive or problematic build possible is still more than the spirit of the conservation commitment would allow. For example, we can get as minimal as we want in terms of how much it's going to damage the wildlife or the conservation or the sensitive areas. But what if that's still too much?
Yeah, I agree.
By whose definition? By the land trust or by our own or by what's that?
Science.
Science?
Colleges.
Science is not a judge. Science is not right?
Earth, is it better than us? Are we better?
Science is
Are we a better judge?
No,
you
no,
think?
science, Brad, science is a method, right?
Science. will
No,
stay-
it's not truth. It's just a method. No, it's not.
It's our
I think we
best
need to
practice.
back it up here. I think this is not super productive. I think that, yes, we would need to judge it by something. Right now, we have the pending management plan, which is as good a job as we've done in the past few years to try to collect the, what science is available that applies to the forest. And I think Sonia brings up a good point in that, what if the only connection was, straight through one of the things that we've decided that we like need to protect, is that acceptable or not?
Well, the straight through, right? That's clearly no. We would not go straight through something we want to protect.
But
That's
that is
laid out.
But that points exactly to the problem with us enshrining a connection in the management plan, because there's no guarantee that that won't happen.
No, we've laid out the buffers, the things that we want to protect, the things we do not want to go straight through.
But we still have to do boots on the ground verification. Like the whole process was to make sure that if we try to move forward with a plan, that it complies with all those things. And yes, there's the map, and we can do our best to draw a line on a map, but we still have to go there and see if that's true. And so for us to basically go ahead and assume that it's going to be okay, and that we're going to write in that a connection to Sip of Sunshine is like a requirement for us to pass the management plan. And then we find out that any trail that we would build that connects is going to violate one of the other principles.
So why, Sam, why did you write in these exemptions, these variances for encroaching on a buffer?
They're small. They're to give a little wiggle.
But the point is the same, like we've identified something that we want to protect, and then you took the step of saying, but we might encroach on it.
Yeah, by like
Right.
10%. I mean,
Sure.
I did the first pass, but like, I'm not,
Well,
we agreed on it as a committee.
No,
That's not
totally,
like-
totally. My point is, clearly there's a spectrum there. There
Yeah.
is gray area.
But there's
Right.
still a hard line at 10 or 15%. Like
There's not a hard line if there's a variance.
there currently is a hard line in the management plan based on the way that we approved it.
You don't see my point with this, that there is built-in gray area? What I'm saying is that there are scenarios where the end can justify the means. Some encroachment is appropriate to create a recreational recreational value for the community. There's some level of impact that we're willing to tolerate.
Sure, but
Yeah.
agreeing, but my problem again is that if we are explicitly agreeing or codifying the fact that a connecting trail is going to happen, then that flies in the face of.
I would look at it more as, we agree that it's not gonna be fought. It's not gonna be attempted to be squelched.
That,
Does that make
that's
sense?
not a conversation though. That's not, that is,
That's
to
an
me, that's a big
understanding.
red flag, is
That's
that
an
if we're saying.
understanding that could be had. That's right, a
May I-
memory understanding.
May I ask a question that might add just a little bit of applicability to this
Sure.
somewhat abstract concept? I don't know if anybody else has the map from our last meeting, number 3, existing trails plus connection to Sunshine. Do you know the map
Yeah,
I'm talking about?
I
That
can put that on the screen if you want.
if anybody remembers, that map shows the proposed possible hike bike trail in purple, if I'm reading it right, a purple line from Sip of Sunshine to the edge where I guess it meets up the vast trail.
That's Jim's sketch. I mean,
Yeah.
Jim sketched on it. Okay.
So if this is a pretty solid example of what that trail would look like, it cuts right across that river or creek, I'm sorry. And it's both of its buffer zones, which is it's a small amount, but it bifurcates that sensitive area completely. And so
By
is that an
crossing-
example? I'm sorry.
Well, just because it crosses a stream, you mean?
Well, it bifurcates if that's a sensitive area where that wildlife is moving about, then and that's
Yeah.
why we want to protect it. That's why we wouldn't want to bifurcate it.
Yeah, I'm definitely making the assumption that a trail such as this would not bifurcate wildlife travel, that they would still be able to cross the trail.
That's just a I mean, I'm not wild about this either, but to defend that, that's just a line you drew on the map.
That's just a line I
And
drew.
you simply tried to avoid the buffers, and you did clip the top end of that stream, well, maybe I could go around that if you were,
Yes.
if that were the only thing
Just
we had to worry about.
Adobe Illustrator.
Yeah.
Drawing a line, yes, for sure.
So that's not too literal, Sonia, but
But I think
So-
it's fair to say
Fair
that if
enough.
that area of the forest had a trail, it would have squiggles, it would cross streams.
Yeah.
I don't think it would bifurcate wildlife travel. If we're talking of, just a ribbon of treaded earth.
Well, that's not necessarily like a hard line in the plan as it stands, like that is we are trying to minimize disrupting like wildlife travel patterns, but like that's different than an area on the ground that we know is like exists, like if it's dry oak, that is actually in the conservation easement. So like, just to like make this very clear, like, let's say,
But to be fair, the dry oak protection is mostly geared towards logging, right? There's nothing, if we said we're gonna put a trail through the dry oak forest, I know, Brad, you're gonna like
no,
lose your mind by me
I
saying
just
it.
wanted to
But
correct
let me
you,
just,
CLTs,
the land
VLT.
trust would be
Right.
okay with it.
but we're going beyond land trust, because land trust
Sure.
didn't look at
Sure.
the other ecological functions of that. They
Sure.
looked at the logging function. to
Right.
Protect. So we're going into the ecological.
We're going beyond, for sure. But we should be clear about that, right? That we're going beyond the land trust's recommendation, and they would be okay with the trail through the dry oak, right?
They would be.
Right, that's why that's important, I think, to understand that we are going as far as we are.
Oh, yeah, we've talked about that, sure. Yeah, we're going by, excuse the word, scientists and, what they say. Don't,
right, did you have a comment?
I look at definition number 2.
So if the this committee wanted the subcommittee to work further on the MOU, would it make sense to expand that, not subcommittee, working group? Would it make sense to expand the working group to include someone either from Richmond Mountain Trails or the Trails Committee?
Mhm.
And someone from the an additional person from the Conservation Commission or the Conservation Community, so that it's 5 people instead of 3 people. And I'm happy to be one of the 5, or I can slide off and somebody else can go on, just so that we're.
I mean, in some ways, we're recreating this committee,
Yeah.
right?
I was thinking.
And
the same.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
And I think recreating this committee, and I think this committee needs to decide if an MOU that does have enough of a guarantee that satisfies the trail constituency, is that something this committee wants to support? If not, we don't have to talk about it, right? If this committee is not gonna get behind an MOU, then it's not worth our time. Let's focus on other things.
So I don't forget, I'm gonna interrupt,
Okay,
because I will forget. The challenge the committee has is we don't have strong representation from the Trails community.
we have,
In the past, we have.
but what has happened is they've felt like it's futile.
Okay.
And to be completely frank, that's really where I'm feeling like this is going too. The presentation I made at the last meeting was like, I don't know, I made a proposal, never got voted on.
We only talked about it for 9 minutes,
Yeah,
so I feel like, is this what we're talking about now? Because
Yeah, I guess we've kind of flipped
it
the
came up
agenda.
last meeting and we had
Kicked
9
it,
minutes before the end of the meeting.
and it went to the
And
to the
It
working.
got sent to the committee, but
Yeah.
I just have a few questions about it.
Yeah, I guess ideally, we've sort of been just riffing off of Merrick's public comment, which is,
Yeah,
directly related to the second item in the agenda. So we technically still haven't even made it to like item B yet, which is just talking about the feedback from the public, comment. Which we should at least touch on and either decide to table, just so we're like technically doing things in order, we're an hour in, we got an hour left. So like if we want to continue to talk about this, that's fine. But yeah, I guess technically we're still, maybe it's, I haven't done my duty as a chair to like tighten up the like public comment. Because we're still talking about, what Merrick had delivered to us and how that affects like our path forward here.
It's
So
it's part of the conversation.
yeah, I would think so. So the question is,
Dan has a couple of comments at some point.
yeah, I guess Dan had also mentioned like, are we talking about that item on the agenda now or what are we doing? Because I think we should check in and decide like, do we want to just table the public feedback item? And because I'm sure we could talk for an hour about the MOU and like the trail proposal and all this stuff that we've been sort of talking about for the past 30 plus minutes. I'm sure we could spend another hour on it and try to figure out, well, where do we move forward here? And I suppose if there's time at the end, we can just flip the agenda items and say we messed up and we just did them in reverse order. And
The public comment may lead into a conversation about the MOU as well. That might be a good segue. We've talked about the MOU. Maybe it would be good to talk through the feedback.
Yeah,
because that does.
I have questions about the MOU, because I felt like we really haven't talked about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's up.
Yeah.
And we had just a few minutes and then we haven't really had a chance to talk about it yet.
Yeah, for sure.
We need to talk about things.
Yeah, we do.
So why don't we start with the feedback? Because that's really the
first couple things are there anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we will end public comments at 58 minutes and move on to item B, which is public feedback continued, and this like synthesis doc that it's not very helpful. That I generated with help with some of the stuff that Brad had put together, plus like the emailed comments and the public comments, like the minutes that were taken from the public feedback meeting, plus like my notes, which were also adjusted by Brad. So basically this was.
Could I just throw one quick thing, full disclosure though on this? I think we're getting, our world is changing. We all need to do this. To come up with a structure for doing this, and this isn't exactly what happened, or what resulted, but I asked AI. I basically gave it a prompt that said, we had this public meeting, we heard lots of stuff, we got a lot of written comments. How can our committee get our arms around this and give everyone a fair shake, everyone who spoke a fair shake in looking at what they said without spending months, going comment by comment through the whole thing. And it came up with a structure that's kind of like this. I don't know, I may have tweaked it. You've done some stuff anyway. This isn't exactly what they said, but it's kind of like it. I think the theme idea, a sense of how many people
and then
brought it up.
They use the audio, or how did it?
And so, pardon me?
Use the audio.
There were a number of inputs. Transcript, yeah. So the minutes, my personal notes, emailed comments, what is that? Transcript, meeting minutes, my own personal notes, the emailed feedback, basically all of the input that we had to the process. And basically pass it through an LLM to say, like, can you collect all of the comments and don't double count it, basically take these different sources, compare them against one another, and try to come up with the themes that were present in the meeting and in the emails, and to basically, rank how often they were mentioned, and then also, to basically turn it into this sort of like matrix where we can evaluate like how easy is it for us to address, and then also the ecological and recreation impacts of each of those comments, since those seem to be the biggest things. So there's sort of like this table here, which has those themes, which are have been like, condensed down from the public feedback. And then there's sort of like each of the themes and a couple different ways we could, potentially respond to each of those themes. So I was hoping this could serve as sort of like a conversation starter for us to go through some of these things and decide like, what way do we want to go with some of these themes that have been submitted by the public, because we do need to address like it's impossible for us to address every single comment, especially for stuff that was made by like a single person. And some of the comments were a bit political in flavor, and I think are kind of out of scope for like the types of things that we should be responding to. Technically, it was a select board meeting where people are giving their feedback. This is us just trying to collect what seems to be really important to the community, and then basically go through and try to decide, how do we want to proceed? So I think that we do owe some kind of response to the community or to the select board that like we have heard this feedback, and like this is sort of where we've landed on a lot of these themes that seem to be surfacing. So that was sort of the hope for this portion of the meeting, was to go through the different themes and then determine like how are we going to move forward with these themes. And obviously some of them will require like more discussion. Maybe some of these we can't make a decision on tonight, but that was sort of the hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of these questions, it's hard to just create a option A, option B, right? There's a lot of nuance there that
Yeah, for sure.
that was my one kind of gut reaction to this is sometimes option A and option B were sort of similar even. They weren't necessarily obviously different. And
I don't see option A and B. Where is that?
So it's below, keep good.
Second
Starts right
page,
there.
I think, Dan.
Here?
The narrative, right? Below, right there.
Oh, okay, I didn't see that.
So
Got it. Yeah, that is pretty,
Well, there's definitely going to be option,
that is very.
or there, not definitely, but there could well be option C, D, E, F,
right.
Yeah.
which are composites and,
Mhm.
but it's a start and
Right.
Yeah, this is kind of like,
you try to show the starkness of maybe
yeah.
if they sound the same, they probably shouldn't, but
Yeah, this
but
is
show us those areas,
Yeah, this is more to try to get like to basically for each of the comments to say like, yes, we hear you, and we're like we're actively changing things based on this feedback, or there are going to be things like that we need to decide as a committee that like we appreciate your feedback, but like we feel like this is a bad take. Like this is not something that we should be doing as a committee, and like I'm sorry that this is like not this that you don't agree with the way that we approach things in the management plan, but we as a committee believe that this is the best way to move forward, and like we're going to stand by it. And maybe the select board will say you need to change that because like we think this is crazy, or they might say like, yeah, you're right to say that like we're gonna have to push back on a few people in the community. Like what if there's somebody that says we should log the entire forest, and like leave it as a bare meadow? Like obviously we would say no to that, so like there are going to be some things that we just can't, consider. So this was kind of taking two approaches. One, which is like, yes, this is great feedback, we're going to change it. The other one is basically like, respectfully, we're going to decline to do anything about this, even though.
So should we start with number one, sunshine?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we should.
Well, that seems like the elephant in the room,
Right.
because on the one hand, there's strong desire to have that connection to Sunshine and the Jericho trail networks beyond. And on the other hand, there's concern about what kind of volume of use that's going to create. And will it overwhelm the other goals of the conservation and meet the needs of all the different user groups. So that is, I think where a lot of the concern is coming from. What that volume of use, as I heard the select board talking about that, what that's gonna look like. I mean, is there a way to imagine what that would look like compared to other trails in town or around town?
Personally, I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions in the biking potential, is that this would be something that was heavily trafficked. And, you know, granted, that's not a hard number, but that's something that has comparable numbers to, say, Chamberlain or Cochrane's, or even the Preston land on the other side of town. I don't think this would be a trail that would see nearly close to those numbers.
And tell
But
us.
that's my own.
Why?
Well, that's why.
Tell us why.
Because
That's,
I think
people think it will be just like that, and
yeah, every conversation
the fact
about
that it's such a highly desired thing makes you think, well, there's got to be a reason, so that it's going to be another network, or even bigger, because it connects to Jericho, and I think that's the
Yeah.
concern.
yeah,
right?
why? That's a good, and maybe that's well, I think two things. One is throw out a number that's comfortable, right? I try to do that in that
Right.
proposal. Let's pick a number that is small, that is reasonable, and, you know, let's stick to it. But primarily with these trails, what I found is the type of trail and where it is determines who uses it. And, you know, a smooth, wide trail that's going right out of our parking lot sees a lot of use. A trail that's thousands of feet up the hill, that's roughly built, that's minimally built, gets a handful of people per day on a sunny day, and none on a rainy day, and none in the winter. So
and
I think this connection trail should be built with the same character that those Jericho trails have been built with: Sunshine, the Cobble, the Maple Wind and BYCC trails. I think a continuation of that feel is very much appropriate. It's not a bike park. It's not a massive amount of people. It's not even really super close to town. So I think we need to establish that number, because just me saying it's going to be minimally used,
Yeah.
until you have a
Just
number
makes
in
me
mind.
wonder, like, well, if it's going to be so minimally used, and it's potentially having all these impacts, then why even do it? It's only going to be for
You're
a
right.
couple of people, and we're going right through, like,
What I found with
what
I found
northern area that we said was going to be more like low use, then why would we do that?
what I found, because I have this exact question go through my mind. Why am I providing this recreational resource to a kid who wants to learn how to ski, right? When it's pouring rain? Why are we being open? Why are we? But what I find is there might not be many people out there, but the experience is that much more powerful when it's a small number of people. And I think that would apply to a trail like this, where it's not a huge amount of people. It's probably too challenging for most kids. It's going to be a small group of people, but for those people, the runners, the bikers, the bird watchers, it's going to be a powerful experience and a very valuable asset. That's my sense. I realize there's, you know, on the one hand, why is it even worth it if it's only for a small number of people? And why make this impact? I mean, the impact is, to me, directly correlated with how many people there are. And if you're below a threshold, it's almost negligible. I know you're gonna cringe, Brett,
No,
but
no.
that's what I've seen. But it is a powerful impact on a pretty small community. And yeah, so I don't know if that makes any sense. I do think establishing hard numbers is really important. And paying attention to those numbers and managing.
And people, to me, that, I see where you're coming from with that. I get it.
The
It just
where
seems really unrealistic to think we can have anywhere.
I'm Siri. What can I do for you?
I don't even
I don't
have
see
that.
how we would control that realistically, like.
What I found, sorry.
I think part of the control is that on the Jericho roadside, there's no parking. And on the Route 2 side, we control 8 spaces. It could be, 10 or 12. VYCC wants nobody parking on their property to mountain bike. And Maple Wind currently does not have parking facilities they use our parking lot which is great, when they have events there.
You sure, right?
What's that?
I thought Bruce was welcoming parking people to park in the back of the barn there.
Okay, all
I
right.
think,
All right, that may be true. All right.
because I heard a big number of
Did he
capacity.
come here and say he had a whole lot of parking?
Boy, I drive by every day and it's a farmstead.
Yeah.
It's full of,
Also, the ownership of the other end of SIP is going to probably change. It was, so there may be a different policy down the road
okay,
at Sunshine's,
people don't, probably if you're moving into there, you don't want a parking lot, but maybe.
You don't know, it might be, RMT may buy the place.
I have found too that if you close a trail, if you put up a sign, those things work. People are not inherently rule breakers. And particularly with free recreational resources, they are very good about this. Not to say that's 100%. There's always bad actors in anything, but I think it's very reasonable to think that this trail could be managed in a way that limited access if need be. And the other thing too, that I remember talking to you about this at one of the first meetings, Sam. The trail can just be closed. That is completely reasonable. It can be tried, and if it turns into something that we didn't want, then just close it. And it goes away and it melts back into the forest. For sure, that should be front and center in any management plan or MOU. Like, it's an experiment. And I think that it is so important for any landowner or anybody thinking about trails and recreation on their property. It's temporary. We're not fundamentally changing the land. Yes, there's impact. Hopefully it's small. I think it's small. But at any point it could go away. And a landowner should always have that control, whether that's the town forest committee or David or the things you're thinking about on Pelco. Like, it's up to you to say, yes, I want this, and this trail should exist and people should be able to use it. And that comes up every year or every period of time.
I think the fear some people have is that once you make that connection through, then the forest kind of becomes a throughway instead of like a local forest becomes this path through.
Yeah.
Like a
throughway.
like a right of way, like a
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Thoroughfare.
attracting, Chittenden County to come down on the weekends or whatever. That's the fear, I think.
Yeah.
That would really change the nature of the place.
So is that, I mean, like if Chittenden County came down, so to speak, but it was, folks that in surrounding towns and they told you, hey, I had a wonderful hike or bike on this trail, like, that's a good thing, right? It's, if they're in a group of 50, well, maybe not,
Yeah.
but it, like, there is kind of a,
balance.
yeah, there is a balance there where, I think a lot of the people that would use such a trail are folks that if you saw them on the trail, you'd be really excited that they were there. That's how it shakes out for me on our side, and I think that would be the case here too. It's,
You wouldn't be as excited though if they were on a trail in the south and loving it there. I mean, what is so special about
connectivity.
that? There's we've already got it, right? PYCC Maplewind.
I did a
They're
ride.
enjoying that connectivity.
Yeah, I did a great ride the other day where I went up UICC and I came down Maplewind and I rode around to Sunshine and went in there and then out north to Keating, Cobble.
Oh.
And being able to skip, miles of pavement to make that connection through would be an amazing experience. Would be that much, that much more of a special time in that forest. So,
But there are other places to do that. I mean, this is like one of the few remaining places that aren't, the northern part, but what we've been shooting for anyway, is to have this one place, where the ecological processes can take place. People can still
not-
people can still go and find solitude. They're not getting that tickle on the back of your neck that you spoke of last week
yeah,
as being a problem in the south. Well, the runners and bird watchers are going to get that
but are
tickle
they,
in the north.
I don't think they're using that space right now. I don't think they're using it to a degree that as a town forest, it's a public
There were a
access.
million cars in the lot. Did you see that picture I sent around?
I didn't see that.
That the lot was full the other morning at 7:30, 8 o'clock.
But are you sure they were going off trail?
I don't know what they were doing,
Yeah.
but there was a ton of people. It was unusual. I mean, it snapped me. I turned around to get a picture of it. I had never seen that many cars there.
Yeah.
Maybe there was one time there was a big dog walking thing going on. Maybe that's what it was. I don't know. But anyway.
I think two things. I mean, I think Prelco is a huge version of what you're describing, right? That's right there. So it's not the only place that, the whole Chinnen Uplands is a massive.
I didn't say
trip,
it's the only, but one of the few. Prelco is another,
Yeah.
good example of this. This adjoins Prelco. In
Yeah,
a way, Prelco makes Andrews better. Andrews makes Prelco better
Yeah.
in its current stage,
Yeah.
where you have casual users. Yeah, you don't have a million people going up there. That's part of the
And a
charm.
million people, clearly, we don't want that.
Yeah,
for sure.
but when you run into a birder up there, maybe they're excited because they found a place where they don't have the tickle on the back of their neck.
Audubon has trails. I mean, birders hike
Well,
on trails.
And bikers don't have there's 100 miles of other trails, so, right?
But I'm just saying a trail it's an asset that all those folks would benefit from. Birders, bikers, hikers, they all would benefit from it.
It's the same on one, then we get into the multi-use, the practicality of multi-use, right?
I, for one, would like us to somehow figure out a way to cite a trail. I think we owe it to the town. The
Why?
town,
Why?
because we've got two user groups. We have many user groups. We have two groups. We've got the conservation community and the trails community that we're at an impasse. And I think we need to support both. They're both important user groups and important folks in town.
Right, and that's why we divided the forest. Why do both groups, why are we forcing them together at the expense of wildlife? Under the same rules, we can divide it, I mean, it's a place for everything.
Because the importance of trail connectivity. Right now, we don't have east-west connectivity. We just don't.
we have east-west,
We-
which is
we
what our
have
mandate
east,
is,
We
not
have east
north-south.
and we have south. We don't have,
We don't have
East-
west.
we don't have west.
We would
don't-
Well, not west-out, yeah,
We don't have west out.
yeah,
We have south, if you will,
true,
and then we have east.
right, okay.
So-
Well, let's work on west. Let's talk to the landowners and see, let's try to get an easement. Let's go to the CRF and see what we can do and do it that way. If we can do it, ecologically responsibly. But where is the screaming need for us to spend, if you read the sinuosity thing, a lot of dough and a lot of time to
Yeah,
do this mile of trail and take out, if you believe in ZOIs, acres and acres of quiet, relatively untrammeled wildlife
Because I would
habitat.
prefer to have one properly sited trail
Okay,
than 3 properly sited trails in the north. And I
Would-
think one is a compromise. Because we went down the road, the previous versions of this committee, went down the road with almost having 3 parallel trails.
Yep.
And fortunately, that didn't work out, but we're not all gonna be on this committee. Well,
yeah,
I'm not gonna be on this committee forever.
right.
And somebody's gonna replace me.
But we've invented this new, we had those 3 trails. But they only evolved because the consultants were told to put a trail where the management plan didn't say to put a trail,
Okay, well, we're, right,
right? And
there
so
was- there
we're
was-
still trying to put the cart before the horse. Because one thing.
we're not really, Brad,
Yeah, we-
we've come up with criteria to figure out if we can get a trail somewhere.
Yeah, but they don't like that looseness.
Well, why don't we,
Skag.
let's say we supported this, we move ahead and we try to cite a trail.
Yeah, I think that's what we need to do.
Well, that's
is,
where
like,
it started.
I think it's not about guaranteeing, it's about trying, like, I think that Wright has a good point, and that like, we need to try to deliver something, or to at least show that like, we're attempting to see if something responsible is possible. And that like, you have some excellent points in that, like, who knows what the makeup of this committee is gonna be in, a year, or 5 years, or 10 years, or 20 years. And it's like, I don't know, you could potentially, if we could find a connection that is deemed responsible based on the current framework of the MP2 that connects and meets the needs of the trails community, and then it gets, this wouldn't necessarily be my wish, but maybe it does get, enshrined in the management plan before it gets signed, although that's still subject to change every 10 years anyway. But it would basically be that is like trails enshrined, but also that no other trails are going in would also be enshrined at the same time. And basically that would prevent, further development of the northern, forest. And it would give this current iteration much more control over how that is done responsibly, versus in 5 years when none of us are around, maybe there's a committee full of folks that just want a bunch of trails, and like 5 trails go in, and like there's no one, like, and that's just the will of the committee at the time. So like, I don't think I'm certainly not trying to guarantee a connection. I just want to try. And I feel like there's a lot of like, I know that like based on what we heard from Merrick, the RMT is not a huge fan of not getting a guaranteed connection. And, too bad for them, I guess. It's like same thing with like, I feel like the folks that don't want to see a single like trail possibility, like of things being developed in the north, aside from the existing, like logging trails and like dispersed use. I feel like that's also too bad. We at least need to try to see if it's possible to put something responsible in, because that might be the needle that we have to thread. Like, otherwise we're just going to bat this around for another 2 years or more. And like, I don't know. I feel like there's like, it doesn't feel good for anyone involved. It doesn't feel good for people on this committee to feel like we're not making any progress. It doesn't feel good for the select board. It doesn't feel good for members of the community. you know, and so I feel like we have to do something, and just saying that, like, I don't know, I feel like fully landing on one side or the other, saying we are definitely going to connect a trail, or we're definitely not going to put any trails in. Neither of those feel acceptable based on the feedback that we're getting. I feel like that, though, that was the main theme in the feedback meeting, was people on either side of that talking point basically saying, like, we need a connection, we need bike traffic in the north, and we should never put any trails in the north, certainly not bikes, you know, or like maybe there could be a walking trail, but not a bike trail. And I think, like, our charge is to find some way through this, and like, so I think, yeah, I even as somebody who's on the Conservation Commission and is the RCC representative, I guess I'm saying this as like Sam Pratt, you know, as not as like the chair of RCC or the RCC representative. I'm saying this as like the current co-chair of ACFC, and as a member of the public who has been asked by the Richmond community to find a way forward here. Is that, like, this really seems to me like the only way that we can at least try to make some progress. And maybe there are some pitfalls along the way, and we realize, yeah, it's actually not possible. And maybe that will strengthen our resolve to basically say, yeah, actually, here's a bunch more reasons why we shouldn't put a trail in, you know, like that. Or we might find the reverse. We might try to put something in and realize, based on, like, you know, biologists or like boots on the ground, that, like, oh, this is actually way more overblown than we thought. And it's like, it's not going to be as big a deal as we thought. And like, we're not going to know unless we try. And I feel like we need to stand behind the work that we've done the last couple of years and put it to the test to see, like, if it is going to protect the forest in the way that we think it will. And like, I think that's going to help us learn a lot in terms of like how the community responds to the management plan, and whether or not they like it, and whether or not there were some issues with our logic. And
Isn't that what the management plan, the way we wrote it, does? Doesn't it lay out a framework by which you can cite a trail if it works?
and that's the
Well,
plan.
the bikes in the north is
Yeah, there's that one sentence.
Yep. True.
was Julian's hill to.
Yeah, I mean, he,
Yeah.
you know, died on the hill, so to speak. That was, you know, his parting words, you know, was that, like, he felt like that was shouldn't be in there, you know, and you know, he was right in terms of like us getting a lot of blowback from some members of the community over it. I feel like we can still potentially, you know, look into a trail that could support bike traffic without changing that language until, like, we've looked, you know, into the possibility. I mean, I guess I don't know enough about trail development to figure out, like, what would a responsible multi-use trail look like. And if you have a couple of like diversions, where if you have like a bunch of switchbacks, and then you have like just a couple of like, you know, foot traffic only sort of shortcuts, so to speak, that allow you to, you know, just go up a slightly steeper spot rather than have to walk back and forth and back and forth. I mean, I've done that at SIP. I've done that at other like bike trails, and it's not very fun as a walker to have to like pace back and forth just to get up a hill, when like I could easily just, you know, go straight up. So
Yeah.
I think that yeah, I think the plan does like do a good job of laying out like how we would go about seeing if it's possible to cite a responsible trail. And I feel like now is the time to try it, you know, regardless of whether or not the select board is trying to approve the plan right now. Like, I don't know, we haven't really been given any direction. We've been given a lot of feedback from the community. We've been given, at this time, little to no direction from the select board. And we have a bunch of folks that are frustrated, you know, about like where we're at. And it's like, yes, there's some more stuff we can integrate into the management plan based on the feedback. A lot of that stuff I feel like is non-controversial, you know, where it's like, this isn't going to change the big thing that everyone's talking about. These are good ways to like improve the plan, you know, talk about climate resiliency, you know, the plan, which we don't do a whole lot of, you know, like that's, I feel like, an easy add. You know, we can do some of that stuff, but we're kind of running out of things to do. Not that that's been like our plan, you know, but like, we did the work of putting the plan together, and like now it's time for us to do something. And I feel like we can just come back and talk about this every single meeting for 2 hours, like once a month, or we can like actually try to do something and see if we can like start to sway some public opinion, and show that like it's possible to have responsible compromise.
Could we take a straw vote, non-binding vote of the 6 of us to see if there's interest in pursuing, hiring experts to, whoever the experts are, to ecologists to site a trail based on the criteria in the MP2 layout?
I think that to add on to that, like, I think you're on the right track, and I feel like we'd basically,
Maybe it's the right track for 3 of us, it might, which is only half of our committee, so.
yeah. I think
Sorry to interrupt.
yeah, we would go to, well, I guess I interrupted you first, so. The management plan shows what the process is for developing a trail. So like, I feel like Jim's already done step 1, sort of, which is like, look at the map, like draw the potential trail on a map. Next thing would be like, let's go walk the route in the forest and see like if we run into any issues. And maybe, I guess that's like currently held up on me, because like I'm hoping that by our next meeting, like I'll have a georeferenced map that we can actually use. So you could port it into Avenza, go walk around. We could walk that pink line and see like, do we run into anything, right? Or we could, use some other map to basically like, figure out, where exactly we are, like, within the buffers. And then, we could flag that, and then basically then we would get the, ecologist or trail designer or whatever, rather than saying like, hey, go wild. Like, we would just say like, we want your focus to be just this route, like, because then I feel like we are capable of doing a lot of like the, preliminary work without getting some, incurring more expenses by having, someone else, I guess, reinvent.
Maybe that's a time when you and Merrick could
Yeah, could be.
connect to it. I mean, his presence, I think, would be super valuable from the just trail building
Engineering.
perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Then
he does know a lot.
he knows trails. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you
I
can
don't
also
know.
talk about that, some of these other things that, like.
Yeah.
The MOU or the management plan, et cetera. I really feel like you two are both smart, articulate, reasonable, charismatic people that would have pretty good rapport. But
Even if
that means
yeah.
nothing of.
Yeah, I guess even if the 2 of us still were able to, come to some sort of agreement, that doesn't mean that it like we speak for the community at
No,
large. I mean, like,
but
I feel in a really odd position, being both the RCC representative and the chair of this committee, and feeling like I need to find compromise and I need to like deliver something for the select board and for the community. Like, so I'm sort
very
of arguing
much-
against my own value.
Sam, I very much appreciated how you have navigated that middle ground. And that has been a big reason why I've been willing to work on this and think about it and continue to show up, because I know that you are very good at the role you've been thrust into. So I know it's a heavy weight, but
Sure,
it's something that it makes it easier for the rest of us, if that makes any sense. That we don't feel, I feel like it is a very good forum for discussion, and it's a neutral space. Even though I maybe get a little heated now and then, but
I mean, by and
Um,
large.
so I do hope you understand that.
I do.
It's you're doing a great job, and I see how hard that can be for you. And
Yeah, my point is mostly just that even if, yeah, I do think we need to get some folks just like to try to walk a route and maybe flag it. And then, but to go back to what Wright was saying, like, I do think that there is some merit in us just sort of taking like getting a read on the pulse of whether or not people are even in support of considering that approach, which would be to, yeah, potentially flag a route and then like engage an ecologist to like walk it and basically tell us if there are like any major red flags.
like, is the question if such a route could be flagged and we found that it satisfied our draft management plan, this new management plan,
Like, would we be okay with?
yeah, would we
Like-
move forward? Like, would we vote to approve such a trail? Is that a fair straw vote?
That's, yeah,
So we would be,
It's a lot of hypotheticals and it's
yeah.
it's pretty
that's the
meaningless. but-
Okay, so there'd still be a no trail option if such a thing couldn't happen.
right.
There's no minimal impact thing. It either crosses, goes beyond the wiggle room in the parameters, right? What's the word we use?
The deviation.
The
trail
deviation,
deviation.
And
or
and then there's okay, no trail, and that, which is what those guys, I keep pointing over to the merits ghost there. But it's what's a lot of people, not just Merrick, are objecting to, right?
Right.
Is the ability, giving us the ability to say, sorry, it can't be done responsibly, sustainably. You know, you gotta live with trails in the south and the other, trails around town. And then, we would get up there, we'd walk the route, we would walk the route. And then try to confirm it. With ecology and using the parameters, and then I suppose it could happen. But would we then have to go
Let's take
back
the
into
straw
the
vote.
plan and take out everything we said about how important it is to keep the northern zone special, right? Strip out all the references that back that up.
No, because to me, are you asking me?
Well, anyone.
All right, so I would say no, because we're not putting 3 trails in. We're considering a trail.
Yeah, but if we have
We're-
people saying a trail is depending who you're talking to, 600 to 800 or more swath, right? Which you're kind of reducing the habitat value. You're talking acres over on a mile,
Right.
And so we've taken a chunk out of that forest. We've taken a bite out of that.
Right.
And we're saying now in the plan that northern part is, should be kept the way it is. It can be used by hikers, skiers, birders, forest bathers and everybody.
Yeah, I think it's
as
fair
much
to
as
say
they
that
want.
if
but-
if the management plan would have to be tweaked. Effectively, yeah.
I mean, I
Allow
think
for
That's what I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think some of that is like, yeah, potentially. I guess like I need to do, unless somebody's already done this, is like sort of like re-audit the management plan to see like how contradictory it is, because there was a lot of like folks saying that like, obviously we know that there's the biker clause in there, which means like as of right now, no bikes, north of the combined, Bass Trail power line corridor. But yes, we do talk about the importance of like trying to manage it in like a 2-zone approach, but the hard rules in the management plan, as far as I know, don't specifically prohibit the development of a trail, at least for walkers, in the north of the forest.
Right.
Even if that does contradict the spirit of some of the language of the management plan, like that is stuff that probably does need to get flagged, like, because it is contradictory, but to me, I guess what I'm saying is that like, if we were going to move forward with a trail that like complied with all of the hard rules that are outlined in the plan,
Mhm.
the language we would be changing is more of like the I don't know. It's more of like it's more of like a description and more of like an ethos and less of like the actual like rules that are stated, like the laws as written,
Right.
so to speak. So like to me, I would feel worse about undermining or removing or changing the actual rules that we put in place that we deliberated over versus some like, flowery language about like, oh, here's why we did things the way we did. And like our goal was to like try to achieve this state. Like that is a very vague and like abstract thing that like could be changed without changing the actual like bullet point rules that like we built into the management plan. So like to me, that doesn't feel like it's big, like, that doesn't feel like a major violation of like the plan that we came up with if we change some of like the descriptive language versus like changing some of the hard points. If we suddenly just gutted the whole like buffer section and, you know, a lot of like the trail development guidelines and all that stuff, like to me, that would feel like us going against everything that we worked so hard to, you know, to put in the plan. Whereas if I feel like if it was like changing, you know, some of the more descriptive language, then like that feels less offensive to me, but that's just my personal take. I mean, maybe
Yeah, and
you feel
I
very
think,
differently.
you know, just for example, such a trail would be managed differently in terms of quantities and closures and, right, it would still fit into that two-tiered northern, southern zone approach, just in the way it was managed. One could say.
Yeah, it's under much stricter scrutiny,
Yeah.
you know, and like it's
Yeah.
So who wants to propose a straw vote?
I could do it. I mean, I think the question is if a trail went in that complied with the MP2 rules as they currently are, let's not even think about bikes right now. If we left the MP2 as is and it were signed by the select board and approved by VLT, and we cited and put a trail in that met all of the criteria of the management plan as it stands in the north that connected to Sip of Sunshine, would we vote to approve it as a committee? Would we recommend that like that trail could proceed? I think that's the main question that I'm hearing. It's like
Pedestrian only or
this is
both?
just a straw vote, so this is like non-binding. We're just trying to get like a feel for like
Yeah,
how people are even thinking about this. Cause like we could go to all this length to try to move forward with finding compromise. And then especially with such a small, like almost bare quorum of a committee right now, we could do all this work and then, you know, we could just have a couple of holdouts who just say like, oh, I'm not going to consider like moving forward with this just because I don't feel like it, you know? And so I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm on the completely different page than you, right? But
I think we need to include the word mountain bike.
okay, sure. So, okay, like, so this is theoretical, straw vote.
say it again.
If we removed the mountain bike clause or made an exception for one specific trail in the north, if we were able to otherwise like cite that trail in such a way and engage ecologists and meet all the criteria of the management plan as a
MP2.
MP2, yep. To put a trail in that connected to Sip of Sunshine, would the committee be comfortable in voting to approve a connecting trail to SIP that would allow mountain bike traffic?
You said that was a little different from what you said at first, because you kicked off with something I hadn't thought of. This is after MP2 is approved? So we get approval for MP2.
Okay, I guess if we got approval from the MP2, then we would need to strike the mountain bike thing first, you know, because this wouldn't be,
Oh.
if the MP2
I see.
as
Yeah, you're right.
written was approved,
That's gonna
Then-
be months down the road anyway.
yes.
So it's still gonna be in draft form.
And it could also be, you know, it can be modified. It's been modified before by the select board. So it could all get approved. And then we could say like, hey, we messed up. We just want to remove this one bullet point that says like no mountain bikes in the north. It would instead say no mountain bikes in the north, except for this one trail.
Okay.
You know, this would be the
I mean,
one place that you could put a bike,
An
you know.
amendment, basically.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So
So would we vote to approve said trail?
yeah,
Assuming
yeah.
it met the criteria of MP2.
Of the current MP2, with the exception that we'd be allowing bike traffic on this one trail, would the committee be comfortable with a connecting trail to SIP in the north?
I would be.
I also would be, assuming it's
I
in
would be as
compliance
well.
with the current MP2, like that's what we worked on the last 2 years. Like I feel like we need to stand by the work that we did. And if it's possible to meet the criteria that we set out in the plan and make that connection with the obvious, you know, change of like allowing the mountain bike traffic on the one trail, that like, I think that plan provides ample protections that we spent hours and hours and hours talking through and finally approving.
Need to let others
Sure.
answer, because we have three others.
I'd want to just know more about the volume of use, because I feel like the north-south zones that we made kind of were compromised. I always imagined there would be a nice pedestrian foot trail put up in the north. And I didn't interpret our existing plan as no trail development. So for me, taking out the bike thing, I have unanswered questions about what that's gonna look like on the ground, volume of use and impact, that I just want to learn more about.
Okay.
In management.
Sonia, do you have thoughts?
Well, just that the question is sort of you know, as you already acknowledged, it makes a lot of assumptions. If the ecologist is has signed off on it and it goes around the sensitive areas rather than through them, I don't have any objection to considering it.
Brad?
Yeah, I'm just one thing that troubles me is the fact this is separate. I almost feel like, as Merrick was talking about, whatever we're edging towards here, if we're edging anywhere, ought to be baked into the plan. I wonder if that'd be a cleaner way to do it, rather than passing the plan as it is, that says no bikes, no dogs in the north. I think dogs are in there too. And then saying out of the side of our mouth, we're gonna have an amendment. We're gonna try to put a bike trail through, right, and be responsible and all that. And if we can't, we can't. But we'll try. And then if we can, we'll ask for an amendment. Maybe that's fine. I mean, anyone thinking out loud, anyone could say we pass MP2 the way it is right now. Everyone's happy, all of us here. Merrick walks in, he's got the new georeferenced map, and he says, hey, look at this. You know, there is a way to get a bike trail up there, guys. And it's all wonderful, and it's, you know, super cool and clean. We go, wow, Jesus, you did it, you know, and we're not worried about volume. We're not worried about this or that. We say, hey, let's do an amendment. We could do that. So there.
Would we have to
I
do an
don't
amendment?
Only if we,
Because of the bike.
Oh, because the bikes.
Because we're
Yeah,
bike, so we'd have to undo the bike part.
I think we're still-
Anyway,
yeah.
so I'm kind of talking myself out of what I was concerned about, I think.
We're also kind of getting ahead of ourselves as of right now, like the MP2 is not approved. We can't, that, you know, because part of the discussion in the MOU and like the trail, you know, proposal was all sort of, at least my understanding was it was under the sort of framework that we're just going to kind of hold this MP2 to the side and like prove it out, you know? So like none of this I feel like is really depending on the select board approving the plan as is. And like this in kind of like a roundabout way, maybe, or like a more meticulous, like very carefully thought through way, is a way for us to enshrine whatever needs to get enshrined in the plan. I think one big thing that, you know, some folks I think rightly have concerns with is like enshrining a connection to SIP in the plan before knowing that it's reasonable, or basically like putting in trail maps into the management plan. I feel like is completely inappropriate because we don't know if they're unless we were able to prove them all out before proving the plan, you know? So like this is basically a way that we could potentially move forward with something and then enshrine it, and then it would finally get signed. So maybe that means that this draft just sits for the next year as we do this work, and like all the parties understands, like we and like RCC and RTC and select board and everyone understands that like the goal is for the select board to sign the MP2, maybe with some minor adjustments, but the main thrust of that, you know, like the language in there is good. And that we're literally just trying to work out these details so that we can port them into the management plan so that it can get approval. So I don't think we need to get hung up on the details of whether or not the select board's going to sign the management plan, the MP2. I think it's more about the spirit of whether or not the committee is willing to consider approving a trail in the north for bikes, if it's in compliance with the MP2.
Right.
That is the question, because like, if we're not willing to consider that as a committee, then like, I don't know what we're even doing here, because like, that's, you know, short of people rotating off or us getting a bunch of members or whatever, you know, like, you know, basically that means that some people's minds have been made up and it's entirely separate from the work that we did in the MP2.
Mhm.
And like, people are unwilling to even consider outside proposals.
So am I hearing a majority of the six of us, or all of the six of us, are supportive of considering removing that sentence that says no mountain bikes in the north and looking at options for, see if it's even realistic to try to put a trail there?
Which is basically already there, right? For any trail. That bit is.
Right, but I think we need to prove it sooner than later because
For that particular trail.
for that particular trail.
Yeah,
Right,
I mean, you want to test it, you know, you said up front, it's a test of
right.
the parameters
Yeah, and
with a
and just
particular
MP2 as a whole.
destination in mind, albeit.
Right.
I am like, I'm certainly willing to consider it. I feel like that's a good path forward. I think that we're going to learn a lot in the process if we were to follow that, you know? So I think there's a lot of ifs. It's hard to like commit to something now and not have your mind, you know, your opinion be swayed one way or the other based off of like what we uncover and how the process goes. But I'm certainly open-minded and willing to consider a connecting bike trail under the current MP2 framework, you know, pending all the legwork that has to happen to make that trail a reality.
Right, and we will find that it'll test the MP2's
Yeah.
criteria, because we may go, oh no, we blew that one.
Yep.
We thought we were on the right track and we were incorrect one way or another.
Yeah, maybe there are some loopholes, or we can see a major violation of the spirit of the MP2 that wasn't, you know, written down like as a rule. So I think it's really.
Do you feel that way, Brad? I feel like you're being kind of quiet here, and not to put you on the spot, but
No.
I just want to remind folks that we're pretty close to time. So
Yeah.
I'm down to keep talking about this, but we probably do need to head towards like wrap up.
I mean, I trust in the criteria, I trust in the parameters. Are we gonna do this? That's the order of things. Are we gonna then try to get we're gonna remove the no bike thing and change and have language that would say, drawn from the MOU, maybe, that says no more than one trail up there, right? And then with all the parameters, and then that's what we would consider doing. We would open the way to considering a trail, to testing, to doing the test, which rather than tacking on an amendment later, because we found a way, now we have to undo. I mean, if it's
Sure.
theoretically possible to have a sustainable, responsible trail up there, then that's good. I mean, it's good that it could happen. I mean, I have my doubts, but if it can happen, why not? So I almost think maybe the way to do it would be to see what we'd have to, using your word, Jim, tweak in the plan to do it. Then we can say we've baked in the possibility. But I think we have to bake in the possibility of no trail too.
Right.
And I don't like the minimal kind of language, but
yeah, that seems reasonable.
Are you okay expending energy on this
Yeah,
idea?
I don't know yet, because I need to get more information.
mm,
The thing that is, you know, worries me is the volume of use and just the Chittenden up, like.
Sure.
I love trails. I use them all the time. I'm just worried about this part of the Chittenden Uplands conservation thing and. I know it's just a little dinky forest surrounded by lots of big landscape, but every little nibble, I think, adds up. I would just want to know, I'm just curious to know more about what that would look like. So I'm not saying no, I'm just saying I just don't have enough information.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that part of that's built into the process is like the trail proposer has to say like, here's why we think the trail, you know, like there's a lot of things. Some of it is like, oh yeah, we want an ecologist to do stuff on the ground. But part of it's like, you know, describe exactly why this, like this needs to be like written down and not just sort of like, you know, batted around in conversation. It needs to be like, here's why this trail is important. And here's like, you know,
Right.
here's like the need, like, and some of this stuff, hopefully this would answer some of your questions, would be like, this is the expected traffic, like this is when it would be open. This is, you know, here are all the reasons why we think that this trail should exist, and like how, you know,
And
how
here
we
are
expect it.
triggers, and here are triggers that would create a reaction, right? That you're sort of, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
I would feel better following this whole framework that we just spent 2 years designing than just having like some side agreement that we reacted to after, you know, we heard the cautionary words.
Yeah, for sure.
What else might happen?
Yeah, I guess maybe different folks were looking at the MOU in different ways. I was always looking at it under the like the view that we would still be using the MP2 as our like as our, you know, North Star, or like the rules that we would have to like absolutely follow along the way, you know. So it's not like we're trying to route around all this work we did by coming up with this sort of like side deal. It's just like trying to get people to agree that we're going to move forward. You know, it's just trying to get people at the table to even to say like, yes, we want to try to like move this process forward. Not that we're trying to like circumvent anything that we've worked so hard for in the last.
It's not a cutout to MP2.
So I apologize if that was not clear to anyone here or to the, you know,
We're still feeling our way on all of this stuff.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I mean,
Well-
there are a lot of hoops.
Yeah.
You know,
so yeah.
kind of, you know, Julian's whole point. You know, if we've got all these hoops for the south, and
Right.
why can't they apply to the north?
So to wrap up, like, I'm not sure where that leaves us because we haven't really responded to any of this public comment. You know, there's a bunch of options on how we could respond, but we still like don't have any official response to the public from the meeting in June. And that's going to wait for, you know, at least another month because we're not going to meet for another month. So we can't really like approve anything to release. Meanwhile, we've got this wetlands, you know, reroute that we're going to look into with Ian, which I think is good stuff to be working on the
Yeah.
side. But then we also have this proposal that Jim
How
put
about-
forth, which is tied to the
How about,
MOU.
I have an idea.
Okay.
How about you take a breather and don't try and create any documents or anything? Just like maybe take some walks in the forest,
Mhm.
Ian, et cetera. And we just think about it and just come back, talk about it next time.
So basically same agenda in a month.
I
Yeah.
think this was actually a very productive meeting. We
I do too.
had actual conversation about stuff, and
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea to go like
I mean, maybe, you know,
three.
starting to think
it.
about the intent of the management plan and, you know, the small tweaks. But I think we've been on such a production train, Sam, of like documents. I feel like you deserve a break and just like, let's just, nothing, there's no rush, right? There's no rush on any of this stuff. And it's,
Kind of a rush. I don't know, I feel a
You-
little pressure.
No,
but
Brad, you will-
Not by next week.
you should always feel like you have a voice and you're a part of the conversation regardless of what town you live in. That is,
Oh, no, that's what I'm not talking
oh,
about.
okay.
No, I mean, as a committee,
As a
a
committee.
rush, I feel that we have some pressure on us.
Oh, yeah,
to get
but
stuff.
that's
That's
always
right.
been there, right? That's from day one,
No.
that pressure was
I
there.
mean, we gotta do it right.
Well, and the public, if they want to, can watch this meeting and know we're making
Yeah.
decisions and progress, and we're not kicking cans down the road.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think,
We're
you know,
having thoughtful
like-
conversations.
Right.
some of the like monitoring stuff, that'll be a fun thing to tackle in the coming months and know if that makes any sense, but
So
And
it's
I
not-
did a terrible job.
No,
with
you're gonna be
minutes.
fine.
Oh my God.
A quick administrative thing.
Sure.
Can the committee approve having Jimmy and me brush hog the lower meadow if we have time, but certainly the upper meadow in September?
In September, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, let's be in touch. That's when you did it last year, right? Just as
Right.
long as I feel like I'd want to check in with a few folks to make sure that there's nothing still, like nesting, or as long as we're clear of, any, potential issues where we're like mowing down like birds' nests or something. I think that the meadows should
There's not
definitely.
many.
Started last year.
Yeah, this is
That was
when we did it last year.
Oh, great. Okay, then I would
But
say,
I thought, I don't know, I was thinking we were well clear, and wasn't there something that we actually were?
It's
Closer
now,
than-
the earliest is like July 15th. So we're,
Oh,
and
okay, so we're
then it was
past it.
August 15th is better. And
Yep.
now we're into September.
Yeah, okay.
So I think we're fine.
I'd say yes.
I don't think that we need to like vote on record for that, but yeah, I think did we do that last year?
Well, we certainly want to get,
Yeah,
we want everybody on the community to know about it
Sure, yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's not our pasture, it's the town's pasture.
yeah,
so-
yeah. I think that's a good plan. I think it needed
Right.
to be mowed, and I think that,
Yes, and thank you for doing
Yeah.
that.
great.
Might we ask just a little homework maybe for the next meeting? What if we said, go through the suggested responses, the option As and Bs, and tweak them maybe as you see, and maybe see which ones you kind of lean towards? Would that help?
It would be nice if
Kind
like,
of address some
yeah.
of these big public issues that.
I would like to get a response to the public on some of the feedback, because it feels kind of bad. Like, I feel kind of bad, like just not putting anything out like officially to the public saying like, here are our basic thoughts about like what we heard from the community right now. Like they might feel like they just came and sort of shouted into a void, and like they're, one of the things Merrick said is that like people, they didn't really feel like they were like part of the discussion, and so like, I don't know what that public forum was, if not, a chance for people to have their voices heard. But like, if they feel like we're basically just letting them rant and then we're just like throwing away all of that and continuing to do our work, like that's not good. So I think if next meeting we could kind of have a redo of this agenda, which is let's talk about public feedback, and let's talk about like the sort of trail proposal / MOU / how do we move forward with like scoping a potential responsible trail in the north. Like, I think that's a good framework for our next meeting. It would be great if folks could go through like these, what was it, like 13 items, or sorry, 11 items, and
Even some.
yeah, and just have like a baseline thought about like what they think about how we should respond. And then hopefully we can kind of burn through that list. And then maybe some of them we just say, we are not prepared to respond to this. We can come up with some language that's like a little bit more vague and say like, we hear you and we're still talking about this. But then for the concrete ones that we know how we feel, we can say, here's how we're addressing that. Here's how we're addressing that. And then we can continue to, talk through this thing that we spent most of tonight talking about, which is like, how do we continue to finesse this potential, trail exploration process, in a way that, might be, reasonable for all members of the community. So I think that's a good, path forward. And like, I don't want to keep people, like, past the time we've agreed to meet. So I guess with that, I would ask if somebody would like to make a motion to,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. I
Thank you.
appreciate your continued efforts, and, we'll keep plugging away at it.